everybody. Welcome to Keys to the Kingdom. I'm Marissa. I hope you're having a nice Tuesday. We are finishing up our Book of Jubilees study today. These are the final chapters in the Book of Jubilees. And so we're going to be reading through chapters 44 through 50 today. And I just wanted to read you... actually, I don't need to read that. Well, I wanted to let you know that because some people ask, why are you studying the Book of Jubilees? Why are you studying the Book of Enoch? Particularly these two books, okay? And first of all, they are made mention in the canon that we have today. And copies of them have also been found amongst the Dead Sea Scrolls and also in the Ethiopic canon that was found or discovered, I should say, some years ago. And just so you are aware, amongst the Dead Sea Scrolls, there was actually approximately 15 copies of the Book of Jubilees amongst the Dead Sea Scrolls. Well, we're not studying this out just because they found some scrolls in a cave. Obviously, because there's been other scrolls found amongst other caves that we don't ascribe to, that we don't give any credence to. Like, for instance, the Nag Hammadi scriptures, we do not give credence to those because those are Gnostic texts that go against the Word of God. But the Book of Jubilees and the Book of Enoch are different in the sense that they were amongst all of the other texts that we hold near and dear in the canon that we have today. That is, I should say, this is the 66 book canon that is mainstream today. So they're always found amongst those other books, whereas the Nag Hammadi scriptures and stuff like that, they're always found just by themselves, and they're not amongst any of the other scrolls. They teach they teach a lot of things that are different. They're worded differently. They have a different sort of I hope I'm saying this right, a sort of a different grammatical way about them, and they teach things that are not biblical. So you can't compare the two, and I want to make a distinction so that people are not confused between these texts and other texts that have been found over the years. Now, since this is the last of our Jubilees study, and these are the final chapters we're going to be finishing up today, next Tuesday, we're probably going to be starting the Book of Enoch. And we're going to start the Book of Enoch again because this is a book that we have given credence to based on what is written, comparing it to the scriptures that we have. The fact that there are a few scriptures in the Newer Testament, in the Brit Hadashah, that quote the Book of Enoch. You won't find those scriptures anywhere else in Scripture, or those verses. You won't find those verses anywhere else in Scripture, but you do find them echoed in the Book of Enoch. And the Book of Enoch was actually preserved in its entirety in the Ethiopic canon. And there was fragments of this same Book of Enoch found amongst the Dead Sea Scrolls. But unfortunately, we did not have them in their complete state amongst the Dead Sea Scrolls. Obviously, there was a lot of damage that was done to these scrolls. They're very, very They're very, very old. And I want to mention to you, just so that you know, the Dead Sea Scrolls date 1,000 years prior to any of the oldest known texts that we have today of any of those books in our Bible. So predominantly, obviously, the Old Testament. The Dead Sea Scrolls are dated 1,000 years older than the Masoretic text or even the Septuagint, because the Septuagint is actually older than the Masoretic text, but the Dead Sea Scrolls are even older. So I just wanted to point that out so that you know kind of where the Dead Sea Scrolls fall on a timeline. And just a couple of things about the Book of Enoch, since that's going to be our next study after Jubilees today. I'm just going to read you this tiny tidbit of history on the Book of Enoch. The Book of Enoch is a collection of texts composed between about 350 BCE and the turn of the era. Now, mind you, a lot of texts are dated earlier in time because as time went on, you had to make a copy and then you had to make another copy. So as of right now, the oldest copies that we have date back to 350 BCE. It is the earliest extant example of an apocalyptic blend of Israelite prophetic and wisdom theologies, best known from the Book of Daniel, and it witnesses the variety within Israelite religion and Greco-Roman period. Sorry, I don't think that's the part I was trying to read. The Qumran Cave 4 yielded fragments of 11 Aramaic manuscripts of parts of First Enoch 1. So the reason that it mentions Enoch 1 is because there's an Enoch 2 and 3 that were written during like medieval times, and they're basically just stories. So anytime you're looking to maybe purchase the Book of Enoch, make sure that it's Enoch 1. Enoch 2 and 3, like I said, are medieval stories. That's all they are. So Qumran K4 yielded fragments of 11 Aramaic manuscripts of part of one Enoch that cover perhaps 1/5 of the Ethiopic text. So about 1/5 of the Book of Enoch was recovered, as well as 9 Aramaic manuscripts of the Book of Giants. I don't know if you've ever read the fragments of the Dead Sea Scrolls. They call it the Book of Giants because it talks about giants, which is not included in the Book of Enoch. The Enoch manuscripts attest both to how closely the Ethiopic text corresponds to its Aramaic prototypes in some places and where it differs in others. The Giants fragments indicate that the Enochic tradition was richer than the Book of Enoch suggests. Missing at Qumran are fragments of the Book of Parables, which is considered Enoch chapters 37 through 71, a Jewish text that provides a context for New Testament Son of Man theology. The absence of the Book of Parables from Qumran probably indicates that this expression of Enochic theology developed in circles different from those directly ancestral to the group that collected the texts at Qumran. The other Enochic writings were authoritative at Qumran, however, and were popular among early Christian writers. So the Enochic writings were authoritative amongst those at Qumran and early Christian writers as well. The Enochic texts remain a canonical part of the Bible of the Ethiopic Church today. So just a little history on the Book of Jubilees and the Book of Enoch and why we're studying it out. So we'll start the study on the Book of Enoch next Tuesday, and we're going to finish up Jubilees today. I'm going to go ahead and put the scriptures up on the screen for you to follow along. This is going to be chapters 44 through 50 in the book of Jubilees. Okay, chapter 44. It says, Israel took his journey from Haran's house on the 3rd new month. And he stopped at the well of the oath on the way, and he offered a sacrifice to the Elohim of his father Isaac on the 7th of this month. So he's talking about Jacob here. Jacob remembered the dream that he had at Bethel, and he feared to go down to Egypt. He was thinking of sending word to Joseph to come to him because he did not want to go down. He remained there 7 days, hoping fate would permit him to see a vision as to whether he should remain or go down. He celebrated the harvest festival of the first fruits with old grain because in all the land of Canaan there was not a handful of seed in the ground because the famine was affecting all the beasts, the cattle and the birds and all men. Remember, this was when Jacob was finally reunited with Joseph after Joseph had revealed himself to his brothers. On the 16th, Yah appeared to him and said to him, Jacob, Jacob. He said, I am here. And he said to him, I am the Elohim of your fathers, the Elohim of Abraham and Isaac. Do not be afraid to go down to Egypt, because I will be there to make you a great nation. I will go down with you, and I will bring you up again. You will be buried in this land, and Joseph will put his hands on your eyes to close them to death. Do not be afraid. Go down to Egypt. And his sons got up and placed their father and their possessions on wagons. Israel got up from the well of the oath on the 16th of this 3rd month, and he went to the land of Egypt. So we see something to point out here. This is the 16th of the 3rd month, and he just celebrated the harvest festival of the first fruits. Okay, so this is typically when we celebrate Shavuot, is in the 3rd month. Israel sent Judah before him to his son Joseph to examine the land of Goshen, because Joseph had told his brothers that they should come and live there so they could be near him. This was the best land in Egypt. It was near to him and suitable for all the cattle they had. These are the names of the sons of Jacob who went to Egypt with Jacob their father. Reuben, the firstborn of Israel, and his sons Enoch and Palu and Hezron and Carmi, making 5. Simeon and his sons, Jemuel and Jamin, Ohad, Jachin, Zohar, and Shaul, the son of the Zephonite woman, making 7. Levi and his sons Gershon, Kohath, Merari, making 4. Judah and his sons Shelah and Perez, Zerah, making 4. Issachar and his sons Tola, Pua, Jasub, and Shimron, making 5. Zebulun and his sons Sered and Elon, Jaleel, making 4. And these are the sons of Jacob and their sons whom Leah bore to Jacob in Mesopotamia, 6. And their one sister Dinah, and all the souls of the sons of Leah and their sons who went with Jacob and their father to Egypt. 29 souls in Jacob, making 30, were the number of people who went to Egypt. And the sons of Zilpah, Leah's handmaid, the wife of Jacob, who bore Jacob Gad and Asher, and their sons who went with him into Egypt. The sons of Gad are Ziphion and Haggai, Shuni, Esbon, Eri, Ereli, Erodi, which makes 8 souls in total. The sons of Asher are Imnah, Ishva, Ishvi, Beriah, and Sarah, and their one sister, who makes 6 in total. All the souls were 14, and all those of Leah were 44. The sons of Rachel, the wife of Jacob, are Joseph and Benjamin. They were born to Joseph in Egypt before his father came to Egypt, those whom Asenath, daughter of Potiphar, priest of Heliopolis, gave birth to him, Manasseh and Ephraim. The wife and children of Joseph totaled 3. The sons of Benjamin, Bela, Bechar, Ashbel, Gera, Naaman, and Ahi, and Rosh, and Mupim, Hupim, and Ard, with Benjamin, totaled 11. Wow, those names are pretty fascinating. And all the souls of Rachel were 14. And the sons of Bilhah, the handmaid of Rachel, the wife of Jacob, who she gave birth to Jacob, were Dan and Naphtali. These are the names of their sons who went down to Egypt. The sons of Dan were Hushim, Samon, Asudi, Ijaka, and Solomon, all totaling 6. All but one died that year in which they entered into Egypt, and there was left to Dan only Hushim. Wow, see, this we never see in the original text. All but one of Dan's sons died. And the only one left to Dan was Hushim. That's interesting. These are the names of the sons of Naphtali: Jaziel, and Guni, and Jezer, and Shalom, and Eve. And Eve, who was born after the years of famine, died in Egypt. All the souls of Rachel were 26. All the souls of Jacob, which went down to Egypt, were 70 souls. These are his children and his children's children, all 70. But 5 died in Egypt in the time of Joseph's rule, and they had no children. In the land of Canaan, 2 sons of Judah died, Er and Onan, and they had no children. And the children of Israel buried those who died, and they were counted among the 70 Gentile nations. Okay, chapter 45. On the 4th new month, in the 2nd year of the 3rd week of the 45th Jubilee, Israel went into the country of Egypt, to the land of Goshen. Joseph went to meet his father, Jacob, in the land of Goshen, and he hugged his father's neck and wept. Israel said to Joseph, "Now that I have seen you, let me die, and may Yah Elohim of Israel, the Elohim of Abraham, the Elohim of Isaac, who has not withheld his mercy and his grace from his servant Jacob, be blessed. It is enough for me to have seen your face while I am yet alive. Yes, it is the true vision which I saw at Bethel. Blessed be Yah, my Elohim, forever and ever, and blessed be his name." Joseph and his brothers ate bread in the presence of their father and drank wine. Oh my gosh, they drank wine. And Jacob rejoiced with very great joy because he saw Joseph eating with his brothers and drinking in the presence of him. And he blessed the Creator of all things, who had preserved him and had preserved for him his 12 sons. Joseph had given his father and his brothers as a gift the right of dwelling in the land of Goshen and in Ramses and of all the region around it, which he ruled over in the presence of Pharaoh. Israel and his sons dwelt in the land of Goshen, the best part of the land of Egypt, and Israel was 130 years old when he came to Egypt. Joseph nourished his father and his brothers and also their possessions with bread and as much as they needed for the 7 years of famine. In the land of Egypt, the land of Egypt became available for purchase because of the famine. And Joseph acquired all the land of Egypt for Pharaoh in return for food. And he got possession of the people and their cattle and everything for Pharaoh. So when this famine was happening, basically the state of Egypt was purchasing the land from the people in return for grain, which sounds kind of terrible if you think about it. Like your government's taking your, we'll take your house and we'll give you food. I'm sorry. It wasn't just the land. Also the people and their cattle. Okay, so just think about what the government's going to do when we start having a famine in the land and we start running out of food. Pretty sure, people are going to have to give up some things. Maybe their houses, maybe their, everything they own. Who knows? The years of the famine were completed, and Joseph gave the people in the land seed and food that they might sow the land in the 8th year, because the river had overflowed all the land of Egypt. For in the 7 years of famine it had not overflowed, and had irrigated only a few places on the banks of the river. But now it overflowed, and the Egyptians sowed the land, and it produced much corn that year. This was the first year of the 4th week of the 45th Jubilee. Joseph took 1/5 of the corn of the harvest for the king, and left 4 parts for them for food and for seed. And Joseph made it a law for Egypt until this day. Israel lived in the land of Egypt 17 years, and all the days which he lived there. So that's Jacob. Okay. It's referring to Jacob when it says Israel. Israel lived in the land of Egypt 17 years, and all the days which he lived there were 3 Jubilees, 147 years. And he died in the 4th year of the 5th week of the 45th Jubilee. Israel blessed his sons before he died and told them everything that they would go through in the land of Egypt. He revealed to them what they would live through in the last days, and he blessed them and gave Joseph 2 portions of the land. He slept with his fathers, and he was buried in the double cave in the land of Canaan, near Abraham his father, in the grave which he dug for himself in the land of Hebron. And he gave all his books and the books of his fathers to Levi his son, so that he might preserve them and replicate them for his children until this day. So this is interesting. He says, so this is what Jacob does before he dies. He gives all his books, so all the scrolls, all the parchments, and the books of his fathers to Levi, his son, so that he might preserve them and replicate them for his children until this day. So all of the texts, all of the books were given to Levi, so that he might continuously replicate them, as Israel continued to do throughout their generations. It happened that after the death of Jacob, the children of Israel continued to multiply in the land of Egypt. And they became a very great nation, and they were in one accord of heart, so that brother loved brother, and every man helped his brother. They increased abundantly and multiplied greatly. 10 weeks of years, all the days of the life of Joseph. There was neither Satan nor any evil in all the days of the life of Joseph after his father Jacob had died, because all the Egyptians respected the children of Israel in the days of the life of Joseph. Joseph died being 110 years old. He lived 17 years in the land of Canaan. In 10 years he was a servant, 3 years in prison, and 8 years he was under the king, ruling all the land of Egypt. He died, and so did all his brothers and all of that generation. But he commanded the children of Israel before he died that they should carry his bones with them when they went out from the land of Egypt. So he's telling them, when you finally leave Egypt, take my bones with you. And he made them swear regarding his bones, because he knew that the Egyptians would not bring his bones out of Egypt or bury him in the land of Canaan, because while dwelling in the land of Assyria, King Macamaran, the king of Canaan, fought against Egypt in the valley and killed the king of Egypt there. So the king of Canaan killed the king of Egypt. So basically he's saying the Egyptians are not going to go back to Canaan and bury him there because of this reason. And pursued the Egyptians to the gate of Ermon. See, this is something else that we don't see in the original text, where we have the king of Egypt being killed by the king of Canaan. But he was not able to enter because another king, a new king, had become king of Egypt, and he was stronger than he. And he returned to the land of Canaan, and the gates of Egypt were closed, so that none came or went from Egypt. Joseph died in the 46th Jubilee, in the 6th week on the 2nd year, and they buried him in the land of Egypt, and all his brothers died after him. That's interesting that all his brothers died after him, because Joseph was like, him and Benjamin were the youngest. I find it interesting that all his brothers died after him. The king of Egypt went to war against the king of Canaan in the 47th Jubilee, in the 2nd week in the 2nd year. And the children of Israel brought out all the bones of the children of Jacob except the bones of Joseph, and they buried them in the field and the double cave in the mountain. Then most of them returned to Egypt, but a few of them remained in the mountains of Hebron. Now this is very interesting because we don't see any of them remaining in Hebron in the original text of Genesis. So they go and they bury all of the bones except for Joseph's in Canaan. Most of them returned to Egypt, but a few of them remained in the mountains of Hebron. And Amram, your father, remained with them. The king of Canaan was victorious over the king of Egypt, and he closed the gates of Egypt. So check this out, because I think this is paramount to understanding how all of a sudden after Joseph dies, there arises a king in Egypt that knew not Joseph. And we could read the text and we could say, okay, so he didn't know Joseph, and now he is not really fond of the Israelites being in Egypt. But it just seems like there's something missing. So this says the king of Canaan was victorious over the king of Egypt, and he closed the gates of Egypt. He devised an evil plan against the children of Israel to afflict them. He said to the people of Egypt, "Look, the people of the children of Israel have increased and multiplied more than we." So, let me pause there for a second. So what we actually see happening here is that the king of Canaan defeats the king of Egypt and is now ruling over Egypt. And it's the king of Canaan, who is now ruling Egypt, that has it out for the children of Israel. So now we're seeing how this makes a little bit more sense about why, there just arose this king. Our texts say, there just arose a king in Egypt who didn't know Joseph. And now he really has it out for the children of Israel and wants to kill them. And we could accept that, I suppose, but there's something missing. Something's off about this new king that's over Egypt. Well, it's actually a Canaanite king, according to the book of Jubilees. So he's the one that says, look, the people of Israel have increased and multiplied more than we. Let us use wisdom and deal with them before they become too many. Let us make them our slaves before we go to war and they rise up against us on the side of our enemies. Who do you think their enemies were? Probably the Egyptians, if you have a Canaanite king. And, probably surrounding countries. But it says, before they leave and fight against us, let us do this because their hearts and faces, or allegiances, are toward the land of Canaan. Their hearts and faces are towards the land of Canaan. Why would they suspect that? Well, first of all, there was this prophecy that they were going to go back to the land of Canaan after they left Egypt. There was also, you had all of the graves of the patriarchs in Hebron. Somehow they knew that they were going to be going back to Canaan. Plus, you still had, well, they had a history there as well. That's where they came from. They had just left Canaan. That's where Jacob had left, and the only reason that they went down to Egypt was because of the famine. So he says, let's go ahead, before they leave and fight against us, let's do this, because their hearts and faces are towards the land of Canaan. So was he trying to protect Egypt, or was he trying to defeat them before they went to Canaan? After all, this is supposedly a Canaanite king. He set over them taskmasters to enforce slavery, and they built strong cities for Pharaoh, Pithom, and Ramses, and they built all the walls and all the fortifications which had fallen in the cities of Egypt. They enslaved them with harshness, and the more they were evil towards them, the more they increased and multiplied. And the people of Egypt despised the children of Israel. So now the Egyptians despise the children of Israel. So let's pause there for a second. That's really interesting. You have a Canaanite king ruling over Egypt. Somehow he knows that that the children of Israel have their sights on going to Canaan. So now he wants to prevent them from going by making them slaves. But he's also convinced the Egyptians to hate the children of Israel. Propaganda, I suppose. Chapter 47, it says, in the 7th week, in the 7th year, on the 47th Jubilee, your father went out of the land of Canaan, and you, Moses, were born in the 4th week. Hold on a second. In the 7th week, on the 7th year, in the 47th Jubilee, your father, because remember, the book of Jubilees is written from the standpoint of the angels speaking to Moses atop Mount Sinai and giving him this message. They're saying, your father went out from the land of Canaan, and you, Moses, were born in the 4th week on the 7th year of it, in the 48th Jubilee. This was the time of tribulation for the children of Israel. Pharaoh, so for some reason Moses' father went out from the land of Canaan, I guess. Pharaoh, the king of Egypt, issued a command ordering them to throw all their newborn male children into the river. And they threw them into the river for 7 months until the day that you were born. And it is said that your mother hid you for 3 months. She made an ark for you and covered it with pitch and tar and placed it in the reeds on the bank of the river. She placed you in it 7 days. Your mother came by night and nursed you. By day, Miriam, your sister, guarded you from the birds. So they were watching him for 7 days. In those days, now you notice those number 7s there regarding Moses. In those days, Tarmuth, the daughter of Pharaoh, came to bathe in the river, and she heard you crying. She told her maids to bring you out, and they brought you to her. She took you out of the ark, and she had compassion on you. Your sister said to her, 'Shall I go and call one of the Hebrew women to nurse this baby for you?' And she said to her, 'Go.' Your sister went and called your mother, Jochebed, and Pharaoh's daughter gave her wages, employed her, and she nursed you." So now Moses' mother is getting paid to nurse her own son by Pharaoh's daughter. Afterwards, when you grew up, they brought you to the daughter of Pharaoh, and you became her son. Amram, your father. Okay, so this is where I was a little bit confused, but now it makes sense. As we read earlier back in the chapter, it said Amram stayed in Canaan. That's why it says right here, that your father went out from the land of Canaan. So Moses' dad was still in Canaan when they went to go bury the bones of all of the Israelites except for Joseph. They took them to Canaan, and some of them stayed in Canaan. And it says that Amram stayed there. Well, this is saying that now he left Canaan and went back to Egypt. And that's where they gave birth to Moses. It says, Amram, your father, taught you writings. Teaching you writings, meaning the laws of God. The teachings of Yahuwah. After you had completed 3 weeks. Now check this out. Afterwards, when you grew up, they brought you to the daughter of Pharaoh, and you became her son. Amram, your father, taught you writings. After you had completed 3 weeks, I don't know, this says 27 years, they brought you into the royal court. So maybe that means 3 weeks of years. So maybe that's what that means. 3 weeks of years? 27 years? They brought you into the royal court. You were 3 weeks of years, see, 3 weeks of years at court until the time when you went out from the royal court and saw an Egyptian beating your friend. Now this says beating your friend, whereas the original text says saw the Egyptian beating a Hebrew. Beating your friend who was of the children of Israel. And you killed him and hid him in the sand. On the second day, you came across 2 children of Israel quarreling together, and you asked the one who was doing wrong, "Why did you hit your brother?" He was angry and indignant and said, "Who made you prince and judge over us? Do you want to kill me like you killed the Egyptian yesterday?" You were afraid and you fled because of these words. Chapter 48. In the 6th year of the 3rd week of the 49th Jubilee, you fled and went to live in the land of Midian for 5 weeks and 1 year. You returned to Egypt in the 2nd week, and in the 2nd year, in the 50th Jubilee. So let's check this out. In the 6th year of the 3rd week of the 49th Jubilee, you fled and went to the land of Midian for 5 weeks, that's 5 weeks of years, and 1 year. You returned to Egypt in the 2nd week on the 2nd year in the 50th Jubilee. So he's returning to Egypt in the 50th Jubilee. You know what he said to you on Mount Sinai, and what Prince Mastema desired to do with you when you returned to Egypt. Did he not seek to kill you with all his power and to deliver the Egyptians from your hand when he saw that you were sent to execute judgment and to take revenge on the Egyptians? But I delivered you out of his hand, and you performed the signs and the wonders which you were sent to perform in Egypt against Pharaoh and against all of his household and against his servants and his people. Yah exacted a great vengeance on them for Israel's sake, and struck them through the plagues of blood, frogs, lice, dogflies, malignant boils, breaking out in pustules, the death of their cattle, and the plague of hailstones. He destroyed everything that grew from them by plagues of locusts, which devoured the remainder left by the hail, and by darkness, and by the death of the firstborn of men and animals. Yah took vengeance on all their idols and burned them with fire. Lots of idols in the land of Egypt. Everything was sent through your hand, that you should declare these things before they were done. You spoke with the king of Egypt in the presence of all his servants and in the presence of his people, and everything took place according to your words. 10 great and terrible judgments came to the land of Egypt, so that you might execute vengeance on Egypt for Israel. And Yah did everything for Israel's sake according to his covenant. And when he had ordained, which he had ordained with Abraham, he took vengeance on them because they had brought them by force into bondage. So he did everything for Israel's sake according to his covenant, which he had ordained with Abraham. The covenant started with Abraham. And he took vengeance on them because they had brought them by force into bondage. Prince Mastema stood against you and sought to deliver you into the hands of Pharaoh. He helped the Egyptian sorcerers. So this Prince Mastema is the name, seems to be the name of the Canaanite king who was king over Egypt at that time. Oh no. Prince Mastema stood against you and sought to deliver you to the hands of Pharaoh. So this, whenever you see Prince, this here, Prince Mastema, he must be speaking of a fallen angel. I believe Mastema, if I'm recalling correctly, I want to say is mentioned in the book of Enoch as one of the fallen angels. Stood against you and sought to deliver you to the hand of Egypt. So Mastema is the one. So let's see here, because it's mentioned back here. Did he not seek to kill you with all his power to deliver the Egyptians from your hands? So now they're speaking of not Pharaoh, but this seems to be a fallen angel. An angel that is against Yahuwah. He helped the Egyptian sorcerers when they stood up and committed the evil acts that they did in your presence. Indeed, we permitted them to work, but the remedies we did not allow to be worked by their hands. Yah struck them with malignant ulcers, and they were not able to stand. They could not perform a single sign because we destroyed them. Even after all these signs and wonders, Prince Mastema was not put to shame, because he took courage and cried to the Egyptians to pursue you with all the power the Egyptians had, with their chariots and with their horses and with all the hosts of the people of Egypt. I mean, it makes sense because obviously, this is a very powerful kingdom, Egypt. And there was a lot of evil forces behind Pharaoh. But I stood between the Egyptians and Israel, and we delivered Israel out of his hand and out of the hand of his people. Yah brought them through the middle of the sea as if it were dry land. Yah, our Elohim, threw all the people whom he brought to pursue Israel into the middle of the sea, into the depths of the bottomless pit beneath the children of Israel, even as the people of Egypt had thrown their children into the river. So he's going to drown the Egyptians in the river like they had thrown the Israeli children into the river. He took vengeance on 1 million of them. In addition, 1,000 strong and energetic men were destroyed because of the death of the suckling children of your people, which they had thrown into the river. On the 14th day, and on the 15th, and on the 16th, and on the 17th, and on the 18th days, Prince Mastema was bound and imprisoned and placed behind the children of Israel so that he might not accuse them. So this is the Satan, the Satan. On the 19th day, we let them, Mastema and his demons, we let them loose so that they might help the Egyptians pursue the children of Israel. He hardened their hearts and made them stubborn, and the plan was devised by Yah our Elohim that he might strike the Egyptians and throw them into the sea. On the 14th day we bound him that he might not accuse the children of Israel on the day when they asked the Egyptians for vessels and garments, vessels of silver and vessels of gold, and vessels of bronze, in order to exact from the Egyptians a price in return for the bondage they had been forced to serve. We did not lead the children of Israel from Egypt empty-handed. So they were able to get a price in return for the bondage they had forced them to serve. Chapter 49, 2 more chapters. Remember the commandment which Yah commanded you concerning the Passover. You should celebrate it in its season on the 14th day of the first month. You should kill the sacrifice before evening. They should eat it by night on the evening of the 14th from the time of the setting of the sun. But on this night, at the beginning of the festival and the beginning of the joy, you were eating the Passover in Egypt, when all the powers of Mastema had been let loose to kill all the firstborn in the land of Egypt. So, this is interesting. This Mastema figure, according to the book of Jubilees, is also the one that was let loose to kill all the firstborn in the land of Egypt. From the firstborn of Pharaoh to the firstborn of the captive maid servant in the mill, and even the firstborn of the cattle. This is the sign that Yah gave them. In every house on the doorpost on which they saw the blood of the lamb of the first year, they should not enter to kill, but should pass by it. That all those should be exempt that were in the house, because the sign of the blood was on the doorpost. And the powers of Yah did everything as Yah commanded them, and they passed by all the children of Israel. And the plague did not come on them to destroy them, cattle, man, or dog. The plague was oppressive in Egypt, and there was no house in Egypt where there was no one dead and weeping and lamentation. All Israel was eating the flesh of the Pesach lamb and drinking the wine, and was praising and blessing and giving thanks to Yah Elohim of their fathers, and they were ready to get out from under the yoke of Egypt and the evil bondage. Remember this all the days of your life. Observe it from year to year, all the days of your life, once a year, on its day, according to all the law of it. Do not forsake it from day to day or from month to month. It is an eternal law and engraved on the heavenly tablets regarding all the children of Israel, that they should observe it on its day once a year, every year, throughout all their generations. There is no limit of days, for this is a law forever. The man who is free from uncleanness and does not come to observe Passover on the occasion of its day, and does not bring an acceptable offering before Yah to eat and to drink before Yah on the day of its festival, will be guilty. If he is clean and close at hand near the temple, and does not come, he shall be cut off, because he did not offer the offering of Yah in its appointed season. He shall take the guilt on himself. Let the children of Israel come and observe the Passover on the day of its fixed time, on the 14th day of the first month, between the evenings, from the third part of the day to the third part of the night, for 2 portions of the day are given to the light, and a third part to the evening. Yah commanded you to observe it in between the evenings. It is not permissible to kill the sacrifice during any period of light, but only during the period bordering on the evening. And let them eat it at the time of the evening. until the third part of the night. Whatever is left over of all the flesh from the third part of the night and onward is to be burned with fire. So basically, you were to slaughter the lamb and eat the lamb in that evening. They shall not cook it with water, nor shall they eat it raw, but roast it on the fire. They shall eat it with care, making sure its head with the inwards and its feet are roasted with fire. And they shall not break any bone of it, for of the children of Israel no bone shall be crushed. For this reason Yah commanded the children of Israel to observe the Passover on the day of its fixed time, and they shall not break a bone of it, because it is a festival day he commanded. There was no passing over from any other day or any other month, but on the exact day let the festival be observed. You see that? On the exact day. That's why we want to get the days right. Command the children of Israel to observe the Passover throughout their days, every year, once a year, on the day of its fixed time. And it shall be a memorial, well-pleasing in the presence of Yah. And no plague shall come to them to kill or strike in that year which they celebrate the Passover, in its season, in every respecting accord to his command. And they shall not eat it outside of the sanctuary of Yah, but before the sanctuary of Yah. And all the people of the congregation of Israel shall celebrate it in its appointed season. Every man 20 years of age and upward, who has come on the day of the Passover, shall eat it in the sanctuary of your Elohim before Yah. This is how it is written and ordained. You shall eat it in the sanctuary of Yah. When the children of Israel come into the land of Canaan that they are to possess, set up the tabernacle or the tent of Yah within the land occupied by one of their tribes until the sanctuary of Yah has been built in the land. There let them come and celebrate the Passover at the tabernacle of Yah, and let them kill it before Yah from year to year. When the house of Yah has been built in the land of their inheritance, they shall go there and kill the Passover in the evening at sunset at the third part of the day. They shall offer its blood on the thresh floor of the altar, and shall place its fat on the fire, which is on the altar. And they shall eat its flesh roasted with fire in the yard of the house, which has been sanctified in the name of Yah. They may not celebrate the Passover in their cities, nor in any place except at the tabernacle of Yah, or before his house where his name has dwelt. They shall not stray from Yah. He wants them to eat the Passover meal with him in his presence. Moses, command the children of Israel to observe the ordinances of the Passover, as it was commanded to you. Declare to them every year the purpose and time of the festival of unleavened bread. They should eat unleavened bread for 7 days. They should observe its festival and bring an offering every day during those 7 days of joy before Yah to the altar of your Elohim. Celebrate this festival with haste, as when you went out from Egypt and you entered into the wilderness of Shur, because on the shore of the sea you completed the Exodus. Okay, last chapter. I made this law known to you in the days of the Sabbaths in the desert of Sinai between Elim and Sinai. So this is when the book of Jubilees, this is the time period that it's written in. I made this law known to you in the days of the Sabbaths in the desert of Sinai. I told you of the Sabbaths of the land on Mount Sinai, and I told you of the Jubilee years in the Sabbaths of years. But I have not told you the year of it until you entered the land which you are to possess. Keep the Sabbaths of the land while they live on it, and they shall know the Jubilee year. I have ordained for you the year of weeks, and the years and the Jubilees. There are 49 Jubilees from the days of Adam until this day, and 1 week and 2 years. And there are 40 years yet to come for learning the commandments of Yah until they pass over into the land of Canaan, crossing the Jordan to the west. The Jubilees shall pass by until Israel is cleansed from all guilt of fornication and uncleanliness and pollution and sin and error, and it dwells with confidence in the land. And there shall be no more Satan or evil one, or any evil one, and the land shall be clean from that time forever. I have written down the commandments for them regarding the Sabbaths and all the judgments of its laws for you. 6 days you will labor, but the seventh day is the Sabbath of Yah your Elohim. You shall do no manner of work in it, you and your sons and your maidservants and your menservants, all your cattle and travelers also will lodge with you. The man that does any work on it shall die. Whoever desecrates that day, whoever has sex with his wife, whoever says he will do something on it, or that he will set out on a journey on it in regard to any buying or selling, or whoever draws water on it, which he has not prepared for himself on the 6th day, and whoever takes up any burden to carry it out of his tent or out of his house shall die. You shall not do work whatsoever on the Sabbath day, except what you have prepared for yourselves on the 6th day, so as to eat and drink and rest. Keep Sabbath free from all work on that day. It is to bless Yah your Elohim, who has given you a day of festival and a pure day, and a day of the pure kingdom. This is a day for Israel among all other days forever. Great is the honor which Yah has given to Israel, that they should eat, drink, and be satisfied on this festival day. Rest on it from all your labor, which belongs to the labor of the children of men, except burning frankincense and bringing offerings, and sacrifices before Yah for days and for Sabbaths. Only this work shall be done on the Sabbath days in the sanctuary of Yah your Elohim, so that they may atone for Israel with sacrifice continually from day to day for a memorial pleasing before Yah, so that he may always receive them from day to day according to what you have been commanded. Every man who does any work on it, or takes a trip, or tills his farm, whether in his house or any other place, and whoever lights a fire, or rides a beast, or travels by ship on the sea shall die. And whoever strikes or kills anything, or slaughters a beast or bird, or whoever catches an animal, or a bird or fish, or whoever fasts, or makes war on the Sabbath, the man who does any of these things on the Sabbath shall die. This is done so that the children of Israel will observe the Sabbaths according to the commandments regarding the Sabbaths of the land. It is written in the tablets, which he gave into my hands, that I should write out for you the laws of the seasons, and the seasons according to the division of their days. This completes the account of the division of days. The book of Jubilees very much coincides with our studying out of the calendars, because you see how it's emphasizing the division of days and how you were to count days and years and months. It definitely was important that you were celebrating it on its appointed day, in its appointed season. The Pesach, the Sabbath, and all of the other feast days, obviously, but this is mostly talking about the Pesach and the Sabbaths. So that's actually going to wrap up our Book of Jubilees study. We're finished. We're done. I hope that you've actually read the Book of Jubilees. I know that we started our study last year. We did most of it last year. If you need to go back and watch those videos, it's helpful. Otherwise, just pick up the book and read it yourself and study it out, because now we're going to be moving on to the Book of Enoch. We're going to read the Book of Enoch together on Tuesdays, God's willing. And hopefully this Shabbat we're going to continue in our in the Book of Numbers, our whole word study on Shabbat. And this way we're getting more of, it's hard to understand the word if you don't read the word. When people say, I don't understand the Bible, it's because they don't read the Bible. You have to just read it to understand it. And then you have to read it again and again and again. There's a lot of things that you're going to see each time that you read that you didn't see necessarily the first time. So I encourage you to Um, read the entire book of Jubilees so that you know, you're not just reading certain chapters out of it, or and that goes for the whole word. I mean, we have to read it in its entirety. All right, guys, that's going to be it for today, and hopefully I'll see you next Tuesday in the book of Enoch. God bless you.